Maya Rodriguez crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel as the station shook around her. Metal groaned and sparks flew from broken cables. She could hear the screams of people running in the corridors above. The air smelled like burning plastic and death. She had been fixing a broken water recycler when the attack started. The first explosion threw her against the tunnel wall so hard she saw stars. Now she moved forward on her hands and knees, trying to reach the emergency exit. Her uniform was torn and blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. The attacks came without warning. Haven Station was humanity's farthest outpost, built on a dead moon orbiting a gas giant. 12,000 people lived and worked here. Scientists, engineers, miners, and their families. Maya's family. Another explosion rocked the station. This one was closer. The lights went out and emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red. Maya felt the tunnel shift around her as the station's structure began to fail. She had to move faster. She reached the emergency hatch and pushed it open. The corridor beyond was empty except for bodies. Men, women, children lay scattered on the floor. Their clothes were burned and their faces were frozen in terror. Maya stepped over them carefully, trying not to look at their eyes. The alien ships hung outside the main viewport like dark birds. They were beautiful in a terrible way. Black hulls covered in crystal formations that caught the light from the nearby star. Maya had never seen ships like these before. Humanity had met other alien races, but these were different. These ships looked like they were built for war. One of the alien vessels moved closer to the viewport. Maya could see figures moving inside through the transparent sections. They were tall and thin, with skin that looked like living crystal. Their eyes glowed with a cold blue light. When one of them noticed her watching, it smiled. The expression on its face was not kind. Maya ran toward the residential section. That was where Jake would be with Lucy. Her husband had taken their daughter to visit the school that morning. The school was in the safest part of the station, built deep inside the rock where nothing could hurt the children. The corridors grew darker as she went deeper into the station. More bodies lay in her path. Some were burned by energy weapons. Others looked like they had been torn apart by claws. The aliens had not just attacked the station. They had hunted the people inside. She found the school's main entrance blown open. The heavy blast doors had been melted through like butter. Inside, the classrooms were silent. Maya called out for Jake and Lucy but got no answer. Her voice echoed off the empty walls. The cafeteria was the worst. Dozens of children and teachers had tried to hide there. Now they lay together in a pile near the emergency exit. Maya searched through them with shaking hands, praying she would not find what she was looking for. She found Jake first. He was lying near the back wall, his body covering something smaller. Maya pulled him away gently. Lucy lay underneath, her school bag still clutched in her small hands. Both of them were still and cold. Maya knelt beside them and did not cry. The tears would come later. Right now, she felt empty inside, like someone had carved out her heart with a knife. She touched Jake's face and then Lucy's hair. They looked peaceful, like they were sleeping. A sound made her look up. One of the crystal aliens stood in the doorway watching her. It was even taller than she had thought, maybe 8 feet high. Its skin sparkled in the emergency lighting. It carried a weapon that hummed with energy. The alien spoke in a voice like breaking glass. Maya did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. It was laughing at her pain. Maya stood up slowly. She had no weapon and no way to fight this creature, but she was not afraid. Fear required caring about staying alive, and right now she did not care about anything. The alien raised its weapon, pointing it at her chest. Maya stared back at it without moving. She waited for the end. Instead, the alien lowered its weapon. It spoke again, this time in broken human language. "You are the last," it said. "Tell your people what you saw here. Tell them the Zephyrian Empire has returned to take back what belongs to us. Your species has 7 cycles to leave our space, or we will do this to every human world." The alien turned and walked away, leaving Maya alone with her dead family. She stayed with Jake and Lucy for a long time. The station was dying around her. Life support was failing and the artificial gravity flickered on and off. Soon the atmosphere would leak away into space and she would die too. Maybe that would be better. But something inside her would not let her give up. She thought about what the alien had said. 7 cycles. 7 years for humanity to abandon everything they had built in this part of space. 7 years before the Zephyrians would come for Earth itself. Maya kissed Jake and Lucy goodbye. Then she left them there and went to find a way off the dying station. The emergency bay still had power. 3 escape pods remained intact. Maya chose the largest one and began loading it with supplies. Food, water, tools, weapons, everything she could carry. She also took the station's communication logs. The attack had been recorded from beginning to end. Earth needed to see what had happened here. They needed to know what was coming. As she prepared the pod for launch, Maya thought about the aliens' words. It had called this place their space and said the Empire was returning. That meant the Zephyrians had been here before, long ago. They thought they owned the galaxy. Maya sealed herself into the pod and launched. Behind her, Haven Station broke apart as its orbit decayed. Pieces of metal and crystal fell toward the gas giant below, carrying the bodies of everyone she had ever loved. The pod's communication system crackled to life. Maya set up a wideband transmission that would reach every human colony and ship in range. "This is Lieutenant Commander Maya Rodriguez of Haven Station," she said. "We have been attacked by an alien force calling itself the Zephyrian Empire. There are no other survivors. I am transmitting all records of the attack." She paused, looking back at the burning wreckage. "Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them the Zephyrians think they own our space. Tell them a human is coming to teach them they are wrong." Maya cut the transmission and set course for the nearest human outpost. She had work to do. 6 months after Haven Station died, Maya Rodriguez had become something the galaxy had never seen before. She was no longer the grieving woman who escaped in a broken pod. Now she was a hunter, and her prey wore crystal skin. Her ship was small and ugly. Built from the pieces of 3 different vessels, it looked like junk floating through space. That was exactly what Maya wanted. The Zephyrians ignored garbage, and garbage could get close to their most important targets. Maya floated, in the pilot's seat, watching the fuel depot through her sensor screen. The Zephyrian base hung in space near Proxima Centauri, a massive structure of black metal and glowing crystals. Dozens of warships docked there every day to refuel before heading toward human space. She had been studying the depot for 2 weeks. The Zephyrians were proud and confident. They posted few guards and ran simple patrol patterns. They never imagined that a single human could threaten their operation. Maya's plan was elegant in its simplicity. The depot stored antimatter in magnetic containment fields. If those fields failed, the antimatter would touch normal matter and explode. The explosion would be bigger than most nuclear weapons. She did not need to fight her way inside. She just needed to plant a small device that would overload the containment system. The Zephyrians would destroy themselves. Maya put on her spacesuit and left her ship in a small maintenance pod. The pod was so tiny that the depot's sensors mistook it for debris. She drifted toward the station's waste disposal port, just another piece of trash in space. The disposal port was not guarded. Why would it be? Who would want to break into a garbage chute? Maya crawled through the waste system into the depot's lower levels. The air was thick and tasted like metal. Alien writing covered the walls, glowing symbols that hurt to look at. She followed the maintenance tunnels toward the antimatter storage area. 2 Zephyrian workers passed by her hiding spot. They were talking in their crystal voice language, but Maya had learned enough to understand basic words. They were complaining about the smell and wondering when their shift would end. They sounded almost human when they complained about work. Maya pushed the thought away. These creatures had murdered her family and threatened her entire species. She could not afford to think of them as people. The antimatter storage core was beautiful and terrible. Hundreds of containment units floated in a zero-gravity chamber, each one holding enough energy to power a city. The magnetic fields that kept the antimatter stable hummed like a choir. Maya attached her device to the main control panel. It was barely bigger than a coin, built from human electronics and Zephyrian components she had stolen from other raids. When activated, It would slowly increase the power load on the containment system until the fields collapsed. She set the timer for 30 minutes and started her journey back to the waste-port. That would give her just enough time to escape before the explosion. Something went wrong on the way out. A maintenance worker spotted her in the tunnel and raised an alarm. Red lights flashed and sirens wailed. Maya ran toward the port as fast as she could, but Zephyrian guards were already moving to block her path. She reached her pod with minutes to spare. The guards were shooting at her with energy weapons that turned the tunnel walls into molten metal. Maya sealed the hatch and launched, pushing the tiny engine as hard as it would go. The explosion came just as she reached her ship. The antimatter storage core went critical all at once, turning the entire depot into a miniature star. The blast wave caught 3 Zephyrian battleships that were docked nearby, tearing them apart like paper dolls. Maya watched through her rear cameras as the light faded. Where the depot had been, there was nothing but twisted metal and glowing gas. Hundreds of Zephyrians were dead, and their fuel supply for this entire sector was gone. But Maya felt no joy in the victory. Each successful attack only reminded her of what she had lost. She was fighting a war that could never bring back Jake. And Lucy. News of the depot's destruction spread quickly through Zephyrian space. Their military leaders were furious and confused. How had one small human done so much damage? Their propaganda broadcast called Maya a terrorist and a coward, but Maya could hear the fear in their voices. Admiral Crescitar was the Zephyrian military commander for this region. He was old even by their standards, with crystal skin that had turned dark blue with age. He had fought in a dozen wars and conquered twice as many planets. Now he faced an enemy he did not understand. Crescitar assigned his best hunter to find Maya. Captain Velthor was young and ambitious, with crystal, skin like fresh ice. He commanded a fast attack ship and had never failed to catch his prey. The admiral gave him unlimited resources and one simple order: bring back the human's head. Velthor studied the depot attack for days. He analyzed the explosion pattern, interviewed the few survivors, and examined the device Maya had left behind. Slowly, he began to understand how she thought. The human was not fighting like a Zephyrian would fight. She did not meet her enemies in honorable battle or challenge their strongest warriors. Instead, she struck at their weaknesses and disappeared before they could respond. It was cowardly, but effective. Maya knew she was being hunted. She intercepted Zephyrian communications and learned about Velthor's mission. The young captain was smart and dangerous. He would not make the same mistakes as the depot guards. But Maya had advantages too. She knew human engineering and Zephyrian technology. She could hide in places where their sensors could not find her. Most importantly, she had nothing left to lose. Her next target was a communication relay in the Wolf system. The Zephyrians used it to coordinate their fleet movements. If Maya could destroy it, their ships would have trouble working together. This time, Velthor was ready for her. He had placed hidden sensors around the relay and positioned attack ships in the nearby asteroid field. When Maya's ugly little ship appeared, he would have her trapped. Maya saw the trap immediately. The sensor readings were too perfect. The patrol patterns too convenient. Velthor was learning to think like a human, but he still thought like a Zephyrian warrior. He expected her to attack the relay directly. Instead, Maya ignored the communication station completely. She targeted the asteroid that Velthor's flagship was hiding behind. The asteroid was mostly ice and rock, but it also contained pockets of methane gas. When Maya's explosives ignited the gas, the entire asteroid became a bomb. Velthor's ship was caught in the blast and badly damaged. As the young captain struggled to regain control of his vessel, Maya sent him a message on an open channel. "My name is Maya Rodriguez," she said. "You killed my family at Haven Station. I want you to remember that name when you die." Velthor survived the asteroid explosion, but his ship was crippled and half his crew was dead. As he watched Maya's vessel disappear into hyperspace, he realized something that chilled his crystal heart. The human was not just fighting for revenge anymore. She was learning to enjoy the hunt. Maya set course for her next target. The Zephyrians had mining operations throughout this sector, using slave labor to extract rare metals for their war machine. It was time to free some of those slaves and teach them how to fight back. The war was just beginning and Maya Rodriguez was no longer alone. The asteroid mining facility at Wolf 359 stretched across 3 kilometers of floating rock. Maya watched it through her ship's sensors, studying the Zephyrian guard towers and the slave barracks built into the asteroid's surface. Thousands of alien workers crawled through the mining tunnels like ants, digging out precious metals for their crystal masters. Maya had learned much about the Zephyrian Empire in the past year. They did not just conquer worlds, they enslaved entire species and forced them to work until they died. The Korthak insect people mined their asteroids. The Velthani fish folk ran their trade routes. Dozens of other races served the Empire in countless ways. None of them had ever rebelled. The Zephyrians were too strong and their slaves too afraid. But Maya was about to change that. She disguised her ship as a supply transport and requested docking permission. The Zephyrian traffic controller was bored and careless. He waved her through without checking her cargo manifests or asking for identification codes. Maya landed in the civilian section of the facility. Workers and traders moved through the corridors, buying supplies and gossiping about conditions in other parts of the Empire. Maya wore a hooded cloak that hid her human features and kept her head down as she walked. The first slave she talked to was a Korthak named Clickwhistle. He was small even by his species standards, with green chitin armor and 4 arms that ended in delicate hands. He was loading cargo crates in a storage bay when Maya approached him. "I need to speak with you," Maya said quietly. Clickwhistle looked up at her with compound eyes that reflected the corridor lights like jewels. "I am working," he said in broken standard language. "Cannot talk. Guards will punish." Maya glanced around to make sure they were alone. Then she pushed back her hood, revealing her human face. Clickwhistle dropped the crate he was holding. His mandibles clicked rapidly, and what Maya had learned was a sign of extreme surprise. "You are human," he whispered, "but humans are all dead. The masters killed them at the far station." "Not all of them," Maya said. "Some of us are still fighting. I want to teach you how to fight too." Clickwhistle backed away from her. "Cannot fight the masters. They are too strong. They have weapons and ships. We have nothing." Maya smiled grimly. "You have more than you think. You have numbers, you have knowledge of this facility, and you have something the Zephyrians do not have. What is that? You have a reason to hate them." Over the next several days, Maya moved through the slave quarters like a ghost. She met with leaders from different species, always careful to avoid the Zephyrian guards. Slowly, she began to plant seeds of rebellion. The Korthak were miners and engineers. They knew every tunnel and passage in the asteroid. The Velthani were traders who understood the facility's supply lines and communication systems. Other species brought different skills and knowledge. Maya taught them things the Zephyrians had never expected them to learn. How to make explosives from mining chemicals. How to jam communication frequencies. How to turn industrial tools into weapons. But most importantly, she taught them to believe they could win. "The Zephyrians are not gods," she told a gathering of slave leaders in an abandoned storage bay. "They bleed and die just like anyone else. I have killed hundreds of them, and I am just one human with a broken ship." A Velthani trader named Splash Current raised a webbed hand. "But you have weapons and ships. We have nothing but mining tools." Maya held up a simple chemical detonator she had built from spare parts. "This cost me 3 credits to make, and it can destroy a Zephyrian battle tank. You do not need fancy weapons. You need to be smart and brave." An elderly Korthak named Deep Tunnel spoke up. "Even if we fight, even if we win, the Empire will send more ships. They will kill us all." "Maybe," Maya said. "But they will know that their slaves can fight back. Other facilities will hear about what happened here. The rebellion will spread." She looked around at the gathered aliens. They came from a dozen different worlds, but they all had the same look in their eyes. Fear mixed with hope. "I am not asking you to die for me," Maya continued. "I am asking you to live for yourselves. To show your children that freedom is worth fighting for." The rebellion began at shift change. Maya had planted explosives in the main power station while Click Whistle and his team took control of the mining equipment. Splash Current's people seized the communication center and began jamming outgoing signals. The Zephyrian guards were caught completely off guard. They had never imagined that their slaves would dare to fight back. Most of them died in the first few minutes, killed by their own mining machines turned into weapons. Guard Captain Shardedge barricaded himself in the command center with his remaining soldiers. He tried to call for help, but the communication system was down. He could only watch on his security monitors as the facility fell apart around him. Maya found him there 3 hours later. The Crystal Warrior was tall and proud even in defeat. His energy weapon was pointed at the door when she entered. "You are the human terrorist," he said. "You have doomed all these slaves with your rebellion. The Empire will send a battle fleet to crush this uprising." Maya nodded calmly. "Probably. But your slaves are not slaves anymore. They are soldiers now, and soldiers know how to die with honor." Shardedge fired his weapon, but Maya was already moving. The energy blast missed her and hit the wall behind her. Before he could fire again, she was on him with a mining tool in her hands. The fight was quick and brutal. Maya was smaller and weaker than the Zephyrian, but she was faster and more desperate. When it ended, Shardedge lay dead on the command center floor. Maya activated the facility's communication system and began broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Maya Rodriguez speaking to all Zephyrian forces. The mining facility at Wolf 359 is now free. Your slaves have become warriors. Your empire built on cruelty and fear is beginning to crack." She paused, thinking of Jake and Lucy. "You started this war when you destroyed Haven Station. You wanted to teach humanity about fear. Instead, you taught us about hate. Now we are teaching the galaxy about freedom." The response came faster than Maya had expected. Captain Velthor's damaged ship arrived just 2 days after the rebellion began. He brought 3 other vessels with him, enough firepower to level the entire asteroid. But Maya was ready for him. She had spent months studying Zephyrian tactics and technology. She knew that Velthor was proud and impatient. He would demand surrender first, giving her time to prepare. The ultimatum came exactly as she had predicted. Velthor wanted the rebels to give up and return to slavery. In exchange, he would execute only Maya and the rebellion leaders. The other slaves would be allowed to live. Maya's response was broadcast throughout the system. "Captain Velthor, you still do not understand what you are fighting. This is not about one human or one facility. This is about every slave in your empire who dreams of freedom. Every species you have conquered and enslaved is listening to this message." She looked out at the Korthak and Velthani fighters who surrounded her. They were afraid but determined, ready to die as free beings rather than live as slaves. "We will not surrender. We will not kneel. If you want this facility, come and take it. But know that every slave who dies here will inspire 10 more to rebel. Your empire is built on fear, but we are not afraid anymore." Velthor's attack came at dawn. His ships hammered the asteroid with energy weapons while assault troops tried to board the facility. But the former slaves fought like demons, using every trick Maya had taught them. Mining explosives collapsed entire sections of tunnel on Zephyrian soldiers. Industrial equipment crushed attack teams in narrow passages. The rebels knew every inch of their prison and turned it into a fortress. The battle lasted for 18 hours. When it ended, 2 of Velthor's ships were destroyed and the third was badly damaged. The young captain himself was wounded and most of his troops were dead. But the asteroid facility was also dying. The life support systems were failing and most of the rebels were casualties. Maya gathered the survivors in the main hangar bay. "You fought well," she told them. "You showed the galaxy that the Zephyrian Empire can be beaten. Now you must spread that message to other worlds." Click Whistle limped forward. His chitin armor was cracked and one of his arms hung useless at his side. "What about you, human Maya? Will you come with us?" Maya shook her head. "I have other work to do, but I will remember all of you, and the galaxy will remember what happened here." As the rebel survivors escaped in stolen ships, Maya prepared her own vessel for departure. She had intercepted Zephyrian communications during the battle. A massive fleet was gathering at Vega Station, preparing to attack Earth itself. She had, perhaps 2 months to stop them. One human against an armada. Maya Rodriguez smiled as she set course for Vega. The Zephyrians had taught her well. She knew exactly how to turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Maya's ship drifted in the shadow of a dead comet, 20 million kilometers from Rigel Prime. Through her long-range sensors, she could see the heart of the Zephyrian Empire. A massive planet wrapped in crystal cities and orbital defense platforms, home to 50 billion crystal warriors and the quantum communication network that held their empire together. She had spent 3 months preparing for this moment, not building weapons or gathering allies, but learning to think like her enemies. Maya had studied captured Zephyrian computer systems, decoded their quantum encryption protocols, and mapped their entire communication network. The Zephyrians' greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. Their empire stretched across 1,000 star systems, held together by instant quantum communications. Every ship, every base, every soldier was connected to the central network on Rigel Prime. They could coordinate perfectly across vast distances. But what if that coordination turned against them? Maya had built her weapon from mathematics and human cunning. It was not a bomb or a virus in the traditional sense. It was a cascade failure protocol hidden inside the Empire's own maintenance routines. Once activated, it would spread through their quantum network like cancer, turning their communication system into a weapon of chaos. The hardest part had been getting close enough to Rigel Prime to plant the code. The planet was surrounded by defense stations and patrol fleets. But Maya had learned that the Zephyrians recycled their quantum communication equipment. Old units were sent back to Rigel Prime for repair and refurbishment. Maya had intercepted one of those shipments and replaced a single circuit board with her own version. The board looked identical to Zephyrian equipment, but it contained her hidden program. When the refurbished unit was installed in the central network, her weapon would begin its work. Now she waited. Her modified circuit board was somewhere inside the planet's communication center, waiting for the right moment to activate. Maya had programmed it to wait exactly 72 hours after installation. That would give the Zephyrians time to forget about the maintenance work and return to their normal routines. The activation signal came as a brief fluctuation in the quantum field around Rigel Prime. Maya's sensors barely detected it, but she knew what it meant. Her weapon was now alive inside the Empire's communication network. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Zephyrian ships continued their patrols and the defense stations maintained their watch. But Maya's program was working deep inside their systems, rewriting code and changing parameters. The cascade began 12 hours later. A Zephyrian battleship near the outer defense ring suddenly opened fire on its own escort vessels. The captain tried to regain control, but his ship's computer had been reprogrammed to identify friendly vessels as hostile targets. Similar incidents erupted throughout the system. Ships received contradictory orders from the Central Command. Navigation systems provided false coordinates that sent vessels into collision courses. Weapon systems locked onto their own bases instead of enemy targets. Admiral Kreshitar watched the chaos unfold from his command center on Rigel Prime. The old warrior had seen many battles, but never anything like this. His own fleet was destroying itself, and he had no idea why. Cut all communication links, he ordered his technicians. Isolate every ship and base from the central network. But it was already too late. Maya's program had infected backup systems and emergency channels. Every time the Zephyrians tried to establish communication, the cascade failure spread further. Captain Velthor's ship was caught in a firefight between 2 Zephyrian cruisers that had mistaken each other for enemy vessels. His communications officer was frantically trying to contact Fleet Command, but every channel carried conflicting orders. Sir, we are receiving simultaneous commands to attack the third moon, defend the orbital stations, and retreat to the outer system, the officer reported. Velthor stared at the tactical display in confusion. The human terrorist had somehow turned their greatest advantage into their worst nightmare. Maya watched the destruction from her hiding place behind the comet. Zephyrian ships were firing on each other across the entire system. Defense stations were targeting their own supply convoys. The proud empire's coordination had collapsed into chaos. But Maya knew the real test was yet to come. Her program was designed to spread beyond Rigel Prime, infecting the quantum communication networks that connected every Zephyrian world. If it worked, the cascade failure would reach across the galaxy in a matter of days. The first reports began arriving within hours. Zephyrian colonies were losing contact with each other. Military fleets were receiving impossible orders. Trade convoys were being attacked by their own escort ships. Maya activated her ship's communication system and began broadcasting on all frequencies. This is Maya Rodriguez, speaking to all Zephyrian forces throughout the galaxy. Your empire is built on the coordination of your quantum networks. I have turned that coordination against you. Your own systems are now your enemy. She paused, thinking of Haven Station and all the lives lost there. You began this war by attacking innocent humans. You threatened to destroy Earth and every human world. You enslaved entire species and called it glory. Now you will learn what it means to fight a war against yourselves. Admiral Kreshitar received Maya's broadcast in his command bunker deep beneath Rigel Prime. The human's image on his screen showed a young woman with tired eyes and a grim smile. We will find you, he transmitted back. We will hunt you down and make you pay for this treachery. Maya's smile widened. You are welcome to try, Admiral. But first you might want to deal with your own ships that are bombing your capital city. Kreshtar looked at his tactical displays and cursed. 3 Zephyrian cruisers were indeed attacking the orbital platforms above Rigel Prime. Their crews convinced they were fighting enemy vessels. Maya cut the transmission and began preparing her ship for departure. The cascade failure was spreading, faster than she had hoped. Soon it would reach every corner of the Zephyrian Empire. Their coordination would collapse and their military would tear itself apart. But Maya's victory came with a price she had not expected. Her ship's hull was cracked from months of hard use and desperate battles. The life support systems were failing, and the engine was running on borrowed time. She had pushed her vessel beyond its limits, and now it was dying around her. Maya tried to plot a course back to human space, but the navigation computer gave her bad news. Her ship would not survive the journey. The hull would breach long before she reached safety. She thought about Jake and Lucy, waiting for her somewhere beyond death. Perhaps it was time to join them. But first, Maya had one more message to send. She activated her ship's emergency beacon and began recording her final transmission. This is Lieutenant Commander Maya Rodriguez of the Human Space Navy. I am transmitting my complete records of the war against the Zephyrian Empire. Everything I learned about their technology, their tactics, and their weaknesses. She looked out at the distant glow of Rigel Prime, where Zephyrian ships were still fighting each other in confusion. The cascade failure will continue to spread throughout their empire. Their communication networks will collapse and their coordination will fail. This is humanity's chance to strike back and free the enslaved species. Maya felt the ship shudder as another hull plate cracked. The air was getting thin and the temperature was dropping. My name is Maya Rodriguez. I was a human being. I kept my promise to make them pay for what they did to my family. I hope it was enough. She sealed the message pod and ejected it toward human space. The pod would carry her records and her final words to Earth, where someone else could continue the fight. Maya's ship finally gave up the struggle an hour later. The hull cracked open like an egg, spilling atmosphere and heat into the cold void. Maya sealed herself into the emergency shelter in the ship's core, but she knew it would only buy her a few more hours. As she waited for the end, Maya watched the battle raging around Rigel Prime. Hundreds of Zephyrian vessels were fighting each other, their crystal hulls bright with weapon fire. The empire that had seemed so strong was tearing itself apart. Captain Velthor's ship appeared on her sensors, limping away from the battle with heavy damage. Maya activated her short-range communicator. Captain Velthor, this is Maya Rodriguez. Can you hear me? The young Zephyrian's voice came back filled with pain and confusion. Human, you have destroyed everything. Thousands of our ships are fighting each other. Our empire is falling apart. Good, Maya said simply. Maybe now your people will understand what it feels like to watch everything you love die. This is not honorable warfare, Velthor protested. You have turned us against ourselves through trickery and deception. Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. Honor? You murdered children at Haven Station. You enslaved entire species. Do not lecture me about honor. Her life support system gave a warning beep. The oxygen was almost gone. I am dying, Captain. My ship is broken and my air is running out. But I want you to remember something. I was just one human with nothing left to lose. Imagine what my entire species will do when they learn what you did to us. The communication channel went silent. Maya closed her eyes and thought about her family one last time. The message pod from Maya Rodriguez arrived at Earth 2 weeks after her death. Inside was everything she had learned about the Zephyrian Empire, their technology, and their weaknesses. But more importantly, it contained proof that one human, with nothing but determination and ingenuity, had brought the galaxy's greatest empire to its knees. Admiral Lisa Crawford read Maya's final transmission in her office at Fleet Command. The older woman had gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many wars. She had known Maya Rodriguez as a promising young officer before Haven Station. Now she was reading the woman's last words. She did it, Crawford whispered to herself. One person with a broken ship actually did it. The reports were coming in from across human space. Zephyrian fleets that had been advancing on Earth were turning back. Their ships were fighting each other or simply going dark as their communication systems failed. The invasion had collapsed before it could begin, but Crawford knew this was only the beginning. Maya's cascade failure had weakened the Empire, but it had not destroyed it. The Zephyrians would eventually restore their communications and reorganize their fleets. When they did, they would be even more angry and desperate. Earth needed to act fast. The first human counterattack launched 3 days later. Admiral Crawford personally led a fleet of 60 ships toward the Zephyrian border. Their target was not a military base or strategic outpost. They were heading for the slave worlds to free the species Maya had inspired to rebel. The Korthak system was in chaos when the human fleet arrived. Former slaves were fighting Zephyrian garrison forces in the asteroid mining facilities. On the planet's surface, entire cities were in revolt. The Crystal Warriors were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Crawford opened a communication channel to the planet's leader, a Zephyrian governor named Brightfang. This is Admiral Crawford of the human fleet. I am offering you one chance to surrender, peacefully. Brightfang's reply came back filled with rage and disbelief. Humans. You are nothing but primitives with crude weapons. We will crush your pathetic fleet and enslave your species. Crawford smiled grimly. Governor, I think you misunderstand the situation. Your communication networks are failing. Your empire is falling apart. And every slave species in the galaxy now knows that the mighty Zephyrians can be defeated by one human with a clever plan. The battle that followed was swift and decisive. The Zephyrian defense fleet was small and poorly coordinated. Many of their ships were already engaged in fighting rebel forces or dealing with equipment failures caused by Maya's cascade virus. The human fleet destroyed the orbital defense platforms and landed troops on the planet's surface. They were met, not as conquerors but as liberators. Korthak, Veltani, and dozens of other species joined the human forces, eager to fight their former masters. Captain Velthor watched the defeat from his damaged ship in orbit around the fourth moon. His vessel was barely functional after the chaos at Rigel Prime. Most of his crew was dead, and his crystal skin had been scarred by radiation burns. He activated his personal communicator and sent a message to the human admiral. Admiral Crawford, this is Captain Velthor of the Zephyrian Navy. I request permission to meet with you under a flag of truce. Crawford was surprised by the transmission. She knew Velthor's reputation as a ruthless hunter and killer of humans, but something in his voice suggested he was not looking for a fight. They met in the cargo bay of Crawford's flagship. Velthor came alone, his crystalline features showing exhaustion and defeat. He moved slowly, favoring his left side where shrapnel had damaged his exoskeleton. Admiral, he said formally, I have come to surrender my ship and crew to your forces. Crawford studied the young alien carefully. Why? Your people have never surrendered before. They prefer to die fighting. Velthor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because Maya Rodriguez was right about us. We are not the honorable warriors we believed ourselves to be. We are conquerors and slavers who called our cruelty glory. He looked up at Crawford with eyes that glowed like blue ice. I hunted her across the galaxy. I thought she was a terrorist and a coward because she would not meet us in open battle. But she was fighting a different kind of war. A war against the ideas that built our empire. Crawford nodded. She had read Maya's reports about the young Zephyrian captain. She mentioned you in her final transmission. She said you were learning to think like a human. Perhaps I was, Velthor said. She showed me something I had never seen before. A single person willing to sacrifice everything for an idea, not for conquest or glory, but for the simple belief that all beings deserve to be free. Velthor reached into his uniform and pulled out a small crystal device. This contains the complete records of our military operations in this sector. Ship positions, supply routes, communication codes. Everything your forces will need to liberate the remaining slave worlds. Crawford took the device, but her expression remained cautious. Why are you helping us? What do you want in return? Nothing, Velthor said. I want nothing except the chance to help undo some of the damage my people have done. Maya Rodriguez died believing that even her enemies could change. I want to prove she was right. The liberation of the slave worlds continued. For months, human fleets worked alongside former slaves to drive out Zephyrian garrisons and destroy their military bases. The cascade failure had spread throughout the empire, leaving their forces scattered and unable to coordinate effective resistance. But the greatest victory was not military. It was the proof that tyranny could be defeated by ordinary people willing to stand up for what was right. On Earth, Maya's daughter Lucy had grown from a child into a young woman. She was 18 now and studying at the Space Academy, training to become an officer like her mother. Lucy had listened to her mother's final message 100 times, memorizing every word. Lucy stood in the memorial garden outside the academy, looking at the simple stone marker that bore her mother's name. Maya Rodriguez had never returned to Earth, but her spirit lived on in every human who refused to surrender to oppression. I understand now, Lucy whispered to the stone. You did not die for revenge. You died for hope. Captain Velthor found her there an hour later. The former Zephyrian warrior now served as a liaison between human forces and the liberated species. His crystal skin had healed, but the scars remained as reminders of the war. You are Lucy Rodriguez, he said quietly. Maya's daughter. Lucy turned to face him. She had her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin. You are the one who hunted my mother across the galaxy. Yes, Velthor said simply. I was her enemy. Now I try to honor her memory by helping to free those my people enslaved. Lucy studied his face for a long moment. She mentioned you in her final message. She said even you might learn what it means to fight for something greater than yourself. Your mother was a remarkable person, Velthor said. She taught me that strength is not measured by the size of your fleet or the power of your weapons. True strength comes from the willingness to stand alone against injustice, even when the cost is everything you hold dear. Lucy nodded and turned back to look at her mother's memorial. The Academy wants me to write a paper about her tactics and strategies. They want to study how one person defeated an entire empire. What will you tell them? Lucy smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like her mother. I will tell them that Maya Rodriguez succeeded because she never forgot that she was fighting for people, not just against enemies. She could have stayed hidden and safe, but she chose to inspire others to be brave. Velthor bowed his head in respect. She changed the galaxy, Lucy. The slave species are free, the empire has collapsed, and hundreds of worlds know that tyranny can be defeated. That is her true legacy. As they stood together in the memorial garden, human and alien united, by their respect for a woman who had refused to surrender, news arrived that would have made Maya proud. The last Zephyrian military base in human space had surrendered. The war was over. But more importantly, the species Maya had inspired were now free to choose their own futures. The Korthak had formed their own government. The Velthani were rebuilding their trade networks as equals rather than slaves. Dozens of other races were learning to govern themselves. Lucy looked up at the stars where her mother had died alone in a broken ship. Maya Rodriguez had kept her promise in the most human way possible. She had refused to let evil triumph, even at the cost of everything she loved. The galaxy would never forget the lesson she taught them. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from armies or weapons, but from one person with the courage to say no to injustice. Maya's war was over, but her legacy would live forever in the hearts of every being who chose freedom over fear, hope over hatred, and love over revenge. And somewhere among the stars, Maya Rodriguez finally found the peace she had been seeking.